Hello, BookTube. This is a beautiful, bright, sunny day here in Boston. Blue skies and feel in the air like it's the first day of summer. Perfect day that invites you to go outside. And I did go out. Much earlier today, I went out first thing and found myself at the Brattle Bookshop. For those of you who are new to the channel, that is a used bookstore in the heart of downtown Boston with a gigantic turnover. And best of all, a sale lot next to the store. Thousands and thousands of books for $1, $3, and $5. Not organized in any way except by price, so that you really have to just sort of browse around out there, and there's no have to about it. It's lots of fun to do. I spent pretty much all of my time there today out in the sale lot. And found a pile of books. Now, of course, the goal with any trip to the Brattle is to get keepers. It's to get books that you're not just cycling through, but that you're going to keep in your library. Although that's only a minor goal, because there's no harm in cycling through if the book only costs you $1, right? Then you can afford to take chances. I've lost count of how many times I've encountered a book that I either never heard of before, or that I had heard of but I hadn't really ever wanted to try at the Brattle for $1. There's no harm at all in grabbing it and trying it. And I did that today. I found a number of things that I want, a number of things that I've never seen, and I want to show them to you. The first one is a good example of something that I've described at the Brattle before, which is that they go out buying all the time. They buy book collections all the time. And when they're out, they will get, like, for instance, your grandma has to go into assisted living. She sells 100 boxes full of books. They will reflect her collection over the years or the decades, right? There'll be whole sets. There'll be concentrations on certain subjects or certain authors. And very often those collections manage to survive the experience of being broken down, put in boxes, shipped to the basement of the Brattle, then brought up, priced, and put out in the sale lot. Very often those collections, those groupings of those books will be obvious, even after all those stages, out in the sale lot. Which is why I say, if you're out in the sale lot and you encounter book 2 in a series of 4 and you really want the whole series, you should probably get book 2, even though the series isn't complete, because the rest of the books in that series are probably making their way to the sale lot. If you find book 2 in a scholarly series, multi-volume biography of somebody, it's very unlikely that somebody sold only volume 2 to the Brattle. It's far more likely that they had the whole set, which means it will appear. So that's what I do when I see books in a set that I really want, and I grab them even if the set's not complete, in the hopes that I will find the volumes that I'm missing. And the first book we're looking at today is a perfect example of that. This is Dance to the Music of Time, Anthony Poole. This is Spring. This is the first volume. These old popular paperbacks have these fold-out posters of the individual seasons. And I had, once upon a time, all 4 of these in a box set. I found a couple of these at an earlier Brattle visit, and I knew, even then, that I would find volume 1 eventually, and now I have it. I will reinforce it. These die-cut covers, I don't know why anybody ever thought they were a good idea, but you basically have to cover that in some sort of material or it's going to rip apart when you're using it. And I am approaching a reread of this whole novel sequence, so it's good that I have it in the form that I want. Then mass market paperback. This is a book I've read in many forms, but I fell in love with it first in this mass market paperback. This is a translation of Aunt Julia and the Scriptwriter by Mario Vargas Llosa, one of the greatest writers living today. This is a fantastic this is a 1980s paperback, back when a time when translated serious literature could appear in a mass market paperback in a bookstore. That doesn't happen anymore. But I read this with a bit of trepidation, because there's a lot of modern 20th century, especially South American literary gimmicks that I don't particularly like, especially magical realism. But this is just soaringly good, just amazingly good. So, and I've had it in a trade paperback and I think a hardcover at one point or another, but this is the form I first fell in love with, and I saw it. It brought back a flood of memories. I don't have a copy of it at the moment, so I'm happy to have this mass market paperback. And then the next 2 are also mass market paperbacks. I tend to gravitate away from them. They are less hospitable. The print is smaller. The binding is weaker. So that if you're rough on your books and you're maybe approaching the age of 29, then mass market paperbacks don't make as much sense. But I grab them when I can, especially if, again, they elicit a flood of happy memories and they aren't available in any other form, or not readily so. And these are Dewey Lambden, who writes Napoleonic-era seafaring adventures. Mark Richardson and I are doing a month-long read-along of The Mauritius Command by Patrick O'Brien to revive our 2 If by Sea series that so many of you wanted to see. And a lot of you, where we talk about nautical fiction and nonfiction. And when 2 If by Sea was in its heyday, what, over a year ago? I lost track of how many people emailed me and said, this is great, it's great to see you and Mark talking about nautical fiction and nonfiction, but when are you going to do Patrick O'Brien? So it was great that we're doing the Mauritius Command. We'll each have a video about it at the end of the month, and I'm hoping that we just move on from there and just do the rest of Patrick O'Brien. But Dewey Lambden also has a series of such adventures. They are the Alan Lurie stories. This is the King's Privateer, and I also got the King's Coat, which is the first book in the series. In these old mass market paperbacks with these originally commissioned artwork, that just doesn't happen anymore. Dewey Lambden has had a very spotty publishing history, hasn't been regular at all like Patrick O'Brien. Half the status of Patrick O'Brien was that the books came trundling down the line once a year, looking all the same and all very nice. If that had happened with this, I think that Dewey Lambden would have caught on more than he did. Alan Lurie is a British naval officer, same thing as Jack Aubrey or Horatio Hornblower. But he's more like Flashman Goes to Sea, if you know what I mean. If you've read any of Charles MacDonald Fraser's Flashman novels, you'll know what I mean. He's a rake-hell, he's insubordinate, he's iconoclastic. He's not at all, I mean, Jack Aubrey might be a little bit on the libidinous side, at least in the flower of his youth, but he's definitely by the book when it comes to his career. And Horatio Hornblower is the book, whereas Alan Lurie is something completely different. Very enjoyable to read. These are, if anything, Dewey Lambden has a better ear for action sequences than either Forrester or Patrick O'Brien. And I didn't have any Dewey Lambden because I used to have, I think I had 3 mass markets. I was very happy to find these 2. The third one's probably lurking around and I just missed it, or it will show up. But I got rid of these. I don't know why. I probably sent them to somebody as terrific historical fiction, just counting on getting them again at a bookstore. And then mass markets like this disappeared. Nobody makes these kinds of things anymore. Imagine somebody bringing out mass market paperback of Dance to the Music of Time. It'll never happen. And so when I saw these, I grabbed them even though I've had them before, because reading the Mauritius Command was a delight, an absolute delight. Once upon a time, I had all of the Patrick O'Brien novels, the Aubrey and Maturin novels, in hardcover. And I read through them, highlighted them, underlined in them, and then made notes in the back of every one of those volumes. I had a complete set with a complete set of notes in the back blank pages. And I got rid of that set. I have no idea why or even where. Somewhere in the world, someone has that set with my annotations all through it. And that was so dispiriting that I didn't have that anymore. I found a stack of the trade paperbacks at a library book sale. I had the box set with multiple volumes in one, so there were 3 big volumes. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking, if you ever have all of the Patrick O'Brien hardcovers again, just the traditional hardcovers, re-annotate them and keep them this time. And this is a perfect opportunity to do that. But now that whet my appetite for other Napoleonic-era seafaring fiction, and Dewey Lambden is really good. Then this next one is a trade paperback. It's a UK trade paperback. I've had it many times. I get a copy of this book pretty much every time I find it in an American hardcover or American trade paperback, Book of the Month Club trade paperback. And as fast as I get it, I give it away because it's such an assuredly great reading experience. And that is The Adventures of Cavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon. This is the UK trade paperback. There is The Escapist on the cup, wrapped in burlap and chains. This is basically a novel that dramatizes the story of Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. It's the ultimate comic book novel, and it's also a lot more than that. I would say also it's the ultimate immigrant novel as well. Just amazing. Just an amazing reading experience. The type of thing that many authors would have written and then sort of retired on. Michael Chabon has kept going, and he's done many, many really good books, and he's still in the prime of life. But this, I will definitely take a trade paperback. in case the yen comes upon me to reread it recently, then I'll have it. If not, I can just give this away and wait. This next one is also a trade paperback, and it is poorly made. This is, who did this? FSG, Frost, and Giroux. It's poorly made. It is basically a stand-in volume until I can find the hardcover. This is required writings by Philip Larkin. And it is, Larkin, of course, is a poet, and I am approaching him. I am approaching Philip Larkin. I have been very happily ensconced in W.H. Auden for the last year, living in that big collected complete poems of Auden. I have been living in them and really gradually learning to absolutely love Auden as a poet. And I have known the whole time that lurking on the fringes of that is Larkin, is the same thing. The people I know, the fans of Auden, love Larkin. And they also love Wallace Stevens. So it's possible that I'm going to get to all of these, but one way or another, I have on my overcrowded books about books bookcase, a collection of prefaces and afterwards that Larkin did, where a publisher will go to you and say, we're about to come out with a new Eugene Onegin. Would you write a preface for it? These are very different. Most of the stuff that's in here is my job. It's just jobbing deadline book reviews. So yes, you're Philip Larkin, but you still have only 800 words. Can you write about Barbara Pym? Or something like that. And I love the way he writes nonfiction. I love it in that other book. I love it in this one. I got this thing because it'll do. I can certainly read it, but it is going to fall apart on me because those are the books I read most. I'm pointing like that because that bookcase is right across the room. I can see it staring at me, overcrowded. Those are the ones I read the most. My own profession, just getting on the scent of something. So if I get a book and it reminds me of somebody, or if I get a new translation of something, I'm going to want to look through that bookcase, find what all my fellow critics had to say about that. I'm not one of those critics who worries about that contaminating my own verdict. Instead, it's just going to inform it. So I know I'm going to use this more than this trade paperback can withstand. I will read it, but I will read it carefully with one eye cocked for finding a hardcover down the line. I'm sure this came out in hardcover first. By the time this came out, Larkin was a name. So I'm sure there's a hardcover with a dust jacket out there somewhere. I just grabbed this in the meantime. Then this next one, a real treat. Never seen it before at the Brattle. Never seen it used before at all. This is Golden Multitudes by Frank Luther Mott. An old book. This was in terrible, terrible shape when I got it from the Brattle. I barely got it back here. I had to reinforce it myself. And this is a study of American bestsellers all through the years. What they were, how they got on the list, how the list developed. So when it's talking about bestsellers, it's terrific because Mott was wonderful. He is a wonderful writer. Cut his teeth on small-town Iowa newspapers. Spent a lot of time at the university, but we spent a lot of time in small-town Iowa newspapers of exactly the kind I would like to infiltrate, like an invasive species. I would love to write book reviews regularly for a small-town Iowa newspaper. I would love to do that. I've wanted to do that for years. Can't believe how hard it is. My three I's, Iowa, India, and Ireland, have adamantly refused to let me in. And Mott was that for years and years. Learned how to write about anything, but he really loved writing this kinds of thing. Writing about magazines, writing about books, writing about the book culture. And this studies bestsellers, yes, but it moves on from there. It branches out from there to talk about book selling and books just in general and reading and readership tastes and fads and whatnot. I've read chunks of this, never read the whole thing, never had a copy before, so I'm very happy to have it now. Then this next one I have had before in a mass market paperback. And I just had no idea that I would ever find a hardcover. I don't have the paperback either. I haven't had the paperback in forever and ever. This is a classic. Very happy to find it in a hardcover with a dust jacket. This is Hans Zinzer, and this is Rats, Lice, and History. And despite the title, this is actually a study of typhus. Its history, the ways that it has warped human history. And it's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. It is so intelligent and witty and sort of wry. It's an amazing, amazing book. This is one of the few examples where all of the mass market paperbacks that I've had over the years of this thing with a rat on the cover, I don't have only because I literally wore them apart. I literally read them until they fell apart. Hardcover, I'm hoping, will be a lot more durable. No idea that I would ever come across a hardcover. This next one is a hardcover also. It's also a rebuy. Matthew at Maybury Book Club and I did a read-along. We did a read-along last month of Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn Waugh. And I had a great time. It was fantastic to encounter that book with someone who'd never read it before. And the whole time I was holding up in those videos the trade paperback with the old BBC miniseries pictures on the front and back. I fell in love with that miniseries, of course, like everybody else did. Thought it was a near-perfect adaptation of the book. I also loved the book. And I've just been using that as my version of Brideshead Revisited, but that read-along really reminded me that that trade paperback is not long for this world. It's been reinforced a million times, but I also put stuff in it. I put clippings in it, Waugh-related stuff in it, and a paperback just isn't made to handle that. So what I needed to do, I knew when that read-along was over, was cut the covers off, back and front, so that I have those images, and use them as bookmarks in a hardcover. But the current hardcover of Brideshead Revisited I don't like. I don't like the cover design. I don't like the artwork. So I thought, okay, well, there was an older hardcover with it that came out years and years and years ago. I'll just wait to find that at the Brattle. But I was kind of eager, so I went on eBay to look for that hardcover, and it was murderously expensive. I don't know why, but it was murderously expensive. That just reinforced in my mind that just wait, the Brattle will provide. Just wait, and it will happen. And it did. I found the exact cover that I'm looking for. This right here. There is the famous, those of you who read along with Matthew and I, that is the fountain at Brideshead. And that is Charles and Julia. This hardcover has seen better days. I had to reinforce it when I got back here. But $1 is a whole lot better than the prices I was seeing on eBay. And this will allow me to give an honorable state burial to that trade paperback, which can no longer really serve me. I know I'm going to read this again. So I was glad that I waited. I'm glad that I found the hardcover that I want. This will go on the shelf. I'll resort everything. Then this next one is an author that we have seen before on this channel. This is Holbrook Jackson. I held up and showed you another Brattle find of his. This is the book that I wanted from him. When I found a Holbrook Jackson book at the Brattle, he wrote about books. A lot of times he wrote about books. He wrote a lot of other things too. But he wrote a lot of books about books and about reading. And they're wonderful. He's a really good writer on that subject. And I found another one of his books and thought, okay, well, no one would get just one of his books. So there are bound to be others, and maybe I'll come across them. And I did. I found the one today that I wanted more than anything, the book about books. The Anatomy of Bibliomania. This thing also has seen better days, but I've shorted up because I'm never going to get rid of it. And it's the whole world of the bookish life. It's not just the kind of edition collecting that, for instance, Mark or Jason do, but informal collecting where you just fill your shelves, or even borderline hoarding. It's all about the kinds of reading on the subway, reading on the train, reading in bed. It's just a wide-ranging, loving study of the bookish life. Very happy to find it. Very happy. So I will be spending a lot of time digging around in this, reading it. This next one was something I had never seen before. Don't think I've ever even encountered it in a bibliography. But then again, there aren't many bibliographies that I would encounter it in, because this particular subject of a bibliography has no shelf of 800-page biographies like Byron does. This is Rollo Walter Brown, and it is called Next Door to a Poet. And it's a little memoir of Edwin Arlington Robinson, who I believe is right front and center in the book. Yes? Yeah, there he is. There's a little sketch of the poet. Edwin Arlington Robinson is a great poet. He is a fantastic poet, and this author knew him as a friend. That's all. It's not a critical study at all. It's just a memoir of a friendship, of what he was like as a person, to know. They met at a MacDowell colony, pretentious writers colony in New Hampshire, here in the United States, where the author was temporarily occupying the cabin that usually went to EA when he was in New Hampshire, and the author has to vacate the cabin as soon as EA comes back. There's a moment where he sees through a notch of trees, he sees Mount Monadnock. Like I was saying, I lament the fact that there are not 10 800-page biographies of Edwin Arlington Robinson. There should be. There should also be a Penguin Classic edition of his poetry, if there isn't already. He should be better known than he is. I don't know why the industry has moved towards Auden and Larkin and Stevens and away from him. But one way or another, this is going to be a delight to read. I don't have, right at the moment, any biographies of Edwin Arlington Robinson. Maybe it's possible that the person who got rid of this at the Brattle also got rid of, I'm not even aware of the kind of biography that I would want, but maybe that means that more Robinsoniana is coming. I would be happy to take it if it comes. This next one is an actual biography, and it's one I've had before, but only in trade paperback, and I really liked it. It's a British monarch. He's one of a kind. Most British monarchs share their name with other British monarchs. This one does not. And the trade paperbacks that I've had have fallen apart. They were university paperbacks, I believe. So I was happy to see it. This is John Apley's The Troubled Reign of King Stephen. And contrary to what you might think from the title, this is not about BookTube. This is about a luckless king who is probably best known, horrible to say, but he's probably best known to readers on both sides of the Atlantic as the king in the background in all of Ellis Peters' Brother Cadfael mysteries. There's a lot more to his story than that. His story is absolutely fascinating. And I don't think in all this time that I've been... sorry for the yappy dog. He's perfectly happy. He's just yappy. I don't think in all the time that I've been wearing out and breaking down and throwing away trade paperbacks, I don't think I've ever seen a hardcover. So that's great. I will reinforce this, and then when I'm done with it, I will put it on the shelf, or the biography shelves right over in the corner there. And there are like 3 shelves devoted to British monarchy. And I don't have anything on King Stephen, so that'll be great to have that. And then we get to the last book. The last book is a rebuy, to put it mildly, but I couldn't leave it behind. It's a UK trade paperback, and it is gorgeous. And it is Wolf Hall. This has the deckled edges. It has the French flaps. It has the loose floppy binding. This sort of merciless bolt hole cover. Just fantastic. I couldn't leave it behind, even though I have multiple copies of this book. I naturally started to wonder if this is going to be my Name of the Rose, my Foucault's Pendulum. Jason Harrigan at Black Sheep Books loves Umberto Eco and has a huge collection of various editions of Foucault's Pendulum, on the book that he knows better than anybody alive. And he gets them just for the fun of it. He gets them just to have all these different editions of the book that he loves. I'm sure that he has what he would call a reading copy of Foucault's Pendulum that he reads if he wants to reread the thing. It was just sort of a fun in seeing how many different formats it's taken. Am I going to become Jason Harrigan? Am I going to get all the Wolf Hall editions that there are? Oh my, that would be really bad. But I was happy to get this, especially since I am planning a buddy read / read along about this book. I just haven't figured out who I'm doing it with. What's that you say? Surely read-alongs are voluntary? Oh no, mon ami. No. I realized relatively recently that considering how howlingly unpopular I am and also unhygienic, if I wait to be invited to read-alongs, I'll be waiting until the cows come home. No, I'm just going to draft people into buddy reads of certain books. And Wolf Hall is on my list. Right now I'm leaning towards drafting Roz from Scaly Dandelion, and I'm debating whether or not my draft will also include not only her Steve, she has a Steve, it's not me, but she has one of her own, and also her super bright children. I might want to draft all of them into a buddy read of Wolf Hall. Sometime this summer. It'll be soon. I don't wait on my draft buddy reads. I just haven't figured out who it is yet, who I'm going to pick for this. But when I do, I'm going to use this volume. I'm not going to use any of the others. I'm going to read this volume. And I'm naturally, when I see a pretty thing like this, big and generous, I automatically wonder, are there UK trade paperbacks like this for Bring Up the Bodies or The Mirror and the Light? And if so, did the person who got rid of this get rid of them to the Brattle? It's not entirely likely in this case, because something like this, when you see a UK trade paperback at the Brattle, that usually means that somebody brought this over on a trip. It was just they bought it in the bookstore in the airport. They flew over with it, and they realized, I don't want to lug this thing back home, so they just bring it to the Brattle. Or drop it off there. That is often the way. You'll often in times in cases like this, you'll find a plain flight stub in the book, so you know for sure that you're right. I don't know what the case is here, but I was happy to find this. Happy to. And that's it. Of course, I can't do a Steve Pyramid. This is way too many books. But that was a very, very good trip to the Brattle. lots of old, lots of new discoveries, things I didn't expect that I would ever be adding to my collection, and I would suspect quite a few keepers. All of the book-related stuff, for instance, are keepers. Where I'm going to keep them, I have no idea, because my recently expanded floor-to-ceiling bookcase for books about books and prefaces and required writing and deadline writing and whatnot is now completely full. Books sideways, books stuffed all over the place. It's completely full. It filled up in like a week. And there's no bigger bookcase. So I need to just make a second bookcase for that. But all of those are keepers. And there's Wolf Hall is keepers, but probably a bunch of other things too. But anyway, that was my Brattle trip for today. A beautiful, beautiful summer day. The first day really that feels like a summer day. It feels like it's okay to call it that. A summer day being wonderfully, invitingly bright, and you just open the windows and leave them open. You're not worried about what the early morning is going to feel like. You're not worried about having them open as the night falls. You just open the windows and leave them open, which is presenting obstacles of its own, because that allows for more background noise. We'll see how that goes. I'll be testing these videos, but one way or another, I'm assuming it's at least good enough. You don't come here for the technical expertise. But that's the Brattle. Next time I go, I will take you along with me. But in the meantime, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you, BookTube.